Hi, I'm Lucy Cabral with Fall River Community Media, and welcome to my third episode of Fall River Community Spotlight, where I highlight an upcoming event about giving back to the Fall River community through music and the arts, something that's very, very close to my heart. And so I am so excited to have in studio today friends, musicians, and originators of an event called Riverstock. So in studio I have Steve Rodericks, Chrissy Anderson, and Christine Rizzo, there you go, who is the beneficiary of an upcoming event in January. So welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm so excited to have you on the show. Music is so much a part of my life. So Steve, tell us a little bit about Riverstock, how it originated. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been knocking around as a musician in southeastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island for a long time, longer than I'm willing to admit here on Fall River Cable Media. But in any event, a couple of years ago, when the pandemic really took root and grabbed a hold of the population, we just realized that there wasn't a place for musicians to play, and there was not a place for music lovers to go out and listen to live music. So I had a friend of mine who convinced me to start doing some Facebook Live shows. So we started, Chrissy and I, from our home, and we started doing a couple of these shows a week. We watched as the audience continued to grow. We started out with 5 or 10 people, then a few weeks later there's 20 people, a few weeks later there's 50 people, 70 people, and we're getting views. It's being viewed 600-700 times over the course of a week's time. So we got to the warmer weather in 2020, in May of 2020, and we decided to take a chance and invite people into our backyard in North Dighton along the 3 Mile River. And we invited some musician friends, and we invited some peeps, and we started out with about 20 people that first Sunday, and then it just continued to grow and wound up outgrowing our backyard. So we wound up moving it to Swansea, but that's how it all originated. It originated as the result of a pandemic.
And so Riverstock, the word Riverstock, talk about the little logo that we have produced, or you have produced.
Well, we live on the 3 Mile River in North Dighton, and I'm a music fan for a long time, we've all heard of the famous music festival that had the word stock in it, so we just borrowed that and put the river in front of it. And our logo is a swan, a rogue swan that was living in 3 Mile River in the summer of 2020. And without fail, every time we set to stop playing music in the backyard, this swan would come and hang out pretty much for the entire day. There were a lot of picture-taking opportunities, and we decided, some of our patrons decided to name the swan Winston, which is John Lennon's middle name. So he's forever become Winston. And we have a friend of ours who's outstanding photographer of live music, Carrie Quinn. She took lots of pictures of Winston, so we decided to make Winston our logo.
And you've been in a number of bands over the years.
Yes, I have.
Talk about all the bands and where you are now with.
Well, it started with a band when I was in high school called Long Tom Coffin. That was the first band I was in. And then they just, bands are like friendships, relationships that you might have in school, and then you outgrow them. You wind up butting heads with people and so on and so forth. So I was in a band called Max Capacity for a while. I took a lot of time off when I got married the second time. My wife had small children, and I didn't feel right about being you know, out and about in bars playing tunes. But after a while, the itch started to get a little bit bigger, and we wound up doing some things. And then 23 years ago, Three-Legged Dog was formed, and I've been a part of that group ever since. It was really just Jerry Heiler and I, and there's been a myriad of players that have come in and out of that project over the years.
And Three-Legged Dog is the house band, I should say, for this event.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And for all the festivals.
And for all the festivals, yes. So, you know, I'm grateful that I have these type of players that are interested in doing these type of events where they're not getting paid. So I've always found over the years that the arts community, whether it be musicians or actors or poets or writers, have always been a more giving group of people than maybe some other industries. I just think that by nature they are interested in sharing the gifts they've been given with other people and not necessarily putting their hand out for compensation.
And that's quite a joy, because actually during pandemic, a lot of people were writing and really had nowhere to perform their music. I think that's where I came along, and decided to produce a couple shows, one that is still going on right now, and it shared with a lot of people out there. Musicians share their music.
Absolutely.
Especially their original stuff. And so I know, Chrissy, you're in the band Three-Legged Dog.
I am.
Talk about yourself and how your musician skills and play a huge part in this community.
Well, I play the flute. I've been playing the flute since 4th grade, which was a very long time ago. So I play that, and I play the harmonica, and I sing backup vocals. And I love it. It's so much fun.
It is. We just celebrated a birthday over in Dighton, and it was a lot of fun. What I especially like about Three-Legged Dog and Black Lights, the other name for you and Jerry, is that you invite musicians to come up at any given show that you're at. And I find that so shareable and so meaningful, and that's how friendships and long-time commitments are made. I enjoy it so much, and of course this show is about giving back. So talk about some of the organizations that have given back, you have given back to, through Riverstock festivals.
There are certain organizations in our area that I'll always have an affection for. I'm a huge baseball fan, so when I was a child, first times to Fenway Park, and you would see the canisters that were screwed into walls at Fenway with just 2 words on it, and it said Jimmy Fund, and it had a little picture of a little boy on that. So I remember that when I was a boy, and you know, my dad never really going by one of those without putting some money in it. So as a survivor of that disease myself, I have a hard time not, you know, donating some money to the Jimmy Fund. So the Jimmy Fund has always been a beneficiary of our festivals. And then I look around for other things. You're about to meet Christine here, and Christine works for an organization called South Coast Samaritans, or is that backwards? It's Samaritans South Coast, right? Yeah, okay. They do very important work in suicide prevention, and this is a plague that has infiltrated our core group of people. We have a lot of our group whose family has been affected by suicide. So So
and especially after COVID.
Yeah, exactly. So we're always going to include that organization and the Winterstock Festival that we'll chat about in a little bit. That will always South Coast is always going to be the beneficiary for that event. You know, so that will just remain for as long as we're going to do it. But we also help some local families as well. You know, if there's a situation that needs a little bit of help and maybe just a little bit of a boost, we try to help out. We're not making thousands of dollars at each one of these things, but what we do make, we try to forward it. And I've offered to, like the musicians that come and play, if they have a cause that is important to them, if they mention it to me on the event that they play, the proceeds we get from that one, I'll usually toss a little bit at that as well.
And so what we do actually is you put out a bucket.
Correct.
You know, in front of the band, in front of the band stage, and anybody who wants to donate comes up. So it's not really pushed, but it is a way of giving back, whether you're there in spirit, watching, you know, the festival, or putting money in the pocket. I mean, that it's a great cause. And for the people that you do help out, whether they're families of the musicians or any organization in town, it's truly a blessing. So I know that when I first came on board, Chrissy, you were, I think there was a women's group in Dayton, I think it was, where we were giving some monetary things and
donations as far as clothes and toiletries and just things, pocketbooks. And we would stuff the pocketbooks with the toiletries and, you know, gift cards or whatever a woman might need if she needed to flee a situation. So we would, we collected them and we stuffed the pocketbooks and we brought them to a women's shelter, and they just left them there so that if there was a woman that needed help, she was able to have the necessities that she needed.
That's great. And Steve, I know that there was an animal shelter or an organization that dealt with pets.
Yeah, there's an organization that I ran into online. They're a couple from Rhode Island. They call themselves Vintage Pet Rescue, and they take in older pets that have been displaced a lot of times because their owners have passed away or have gotten to a point where their health situation is deteriorated and they're forced to live in nursing homes or things like that. And it's difficult to find someone that wants to adopt 10, 12, 13-year-old dogs. So enter Vintage Pet Rescue, and they take these animals, and they're just an amazing couple. I think at any given time they have between 15 and 20 dogs living in their house. So, you know, their expenses are huge between veterinarian bills and food and cleaning products and all this other kind of stuff. So I've been donating to them personally for a few years, and so we decided to make them in the rotation as a beneficiary, and we even had them invited them to bring a table selling T-shirts and wristbands and all that other stuff, and we had one of their dogs you know, come to one of our Riverstock sessions last summer.
Which was wonderful.
Yeah,
absolutely wonderful.
It was great. Yeah, we enjoyed it. We do homeless shelters as well. 2 on Aquidneck Island, McKinney Shelter, and Lucy's Hearth. We've been donating to them right along as well. So.
And talk about Carrigan Nelson.
Well, Carrigan is just a special human being. She's a 21-year-old woman who is battling a rare bone cancer called osteosarcoma. And I met her through a mutual friend a few years ago, and I've just fallen into the deep end of the pool with her and her family. And she looks up to me as something that she aspires to be, someone who's survived a serious medical situation and is still performing live music. So
she's an incredible singer. She has a set of lungs on her.
She's ridiculous.
So powerful.
Agree 1,000%. So she's been through a lot, and she's likely to go through a lot more. But her and I have the oddest of friendships. And I am grateful to her and to her family for that friendship. She's a wonderful girl.
So talk about Riverstock.
Yep.
What's coming up with winter? Actually, over the years, we've had quite a few celebrations.
We have.
And one of them, I'm almost done editing it. Want to talk about that one?
Well,
that story is amazing to me.
The first season of Riverstock in our backyard, we have a couple of people there, Terry and Carol, who I affectionately refer to as Jackie Onassis because she looks a lot like the late First Lady, but and her cowboy. Before the last Riverstock in 2020, I got an urgent call from Terry the night before the show saying, I really need a little bit of time on your stage tomorrow. And he explained that he's told Carol that he's written a poem about Riverstock, and Terry is the type of man that would write a poem and would want to recite it in front of people. He's a very eloquent guy, and but he told me that what he really wanted to do was propose to Carol. Now, these folks are in their mid-70s, and they've just fallen in love because of their love for live music. That's where they met. They met at a dance hall on Sunday afternoon jams, and they fell in love. And so here he is on his knee on our Riverstock stage that we built in my backyard, asking her to marry him. It was quite a situation. So they asked if they could get married where this all started, on our river. So this past September, we hosted them and
Wedding stock.
Right, wedding stock, 60 of their closest friends in our yard. And that was the most, as a local musician, it's the most ridiculous day of my life, really. I mean,
right?
The legendary Tony Lynn Washington, 85 years old in all her glories, singing with a blues band that you would have to have seen to believed, and then a guest appearance by probably the, well, most famous anyway, musician ever to come out of our area, Duke Robillard, playing his guitar in my driveway. So, peace to you, Duke. It was pretty cool. So yeah, it was quite the event. Great,
quite the event.
It really was. Yep.
And so, talk a little bit about Riverstock. What's coming up?
Well, a couple of years ago, last year, at the end of last year's 2021's schedule. There was just a lot of downtrodden peeps that were like, I can't believe we've got to wait 6 months until we roll around in May. So I just got this other idea in my head that maybe we could do one winter gathering. So where am I going to do it? So I went. Like, matter of fact, I think I talked to you about it, and about what we could do, and we agreed that my best avenue was to go see Pat Norton at the Narrows. So I went knocking on his door, and he agreed to have a meeting with me, and we talked about our festival. It's not hard to follow Riverstock on social media, and because of Lucy and the fine folks here at Fall River Media on the airwaves as well. So it was pretty cool. So he agreed to let us do it, and so last January we had our first ever Riverstock, and I reached out to him a couple of months ago about asking him whether or not he was interested in doing it again, and there was no hesitation from him and the folks at the Narrows. So we're doing it again, and it's coming up in a month, actually,
Right.
the 14th of January.
Right.
So we've got an amazing lineup of players, a lot of them that have been on our Riverstock stage several times. The great Louis Lehman, everybody knows Louis in southeastern Massachusetts. The Automatics is a blues band out of Rhode Island, fronted by the Probers frontman, Manny Vincente, and Professor Harp's old guitar player, Jeff Stanhope, is in that band. These guys are fabulous. The Berger Boys, this is Jimmy Berger's, he and his son, and if you're not a believer in family harmonies, then I invite you to the Narrows on January 14th and listen to these guys. They're ridiculous. Molly O'Leary and John Fernandez are just brilliant local songwriters, both of them, and two of the sweetest people you'll want to meet. Kenny Mata and Lisa Cabral with their extreme acoustic act. Beth Barron, Laurie Sylvia with a cast of characters. This duo, Carson, Fernando Carrero, and Justin Sampson, drummer and ridiculously talented guitar player. And then Three-Legged Dog with special guest Kenny Mata. So we're really looking forward to it, and all to benefit this ladies' organization.
Yes, and so Christine, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
How did you get involved in Riverstock? How did you?
I was friends with Steve.
Okay.
You know, Facebook friends with Steve, and during the pandemic when we were all locked in our houses, at that time I lived alone, so it wasn't an easy thing to get through. And I looked forward to those Wednesday nights, you know, it became like something where you started meeting people online who, you know, very few of which I had known before. But I think through some magic, he created a family, you know, and that's kind of what it's called, the Riverstock family. You know, all these people who just are giving wonderful, fantastic people, you know. And that's when I met Chrissy, and I consider her one of my best friends. I just love her to death. So it really was a magical thing that happened, you know, a silver lining, and he got a lot of us through that lockdown phase.
I find it interesting because Christine mentioned to me during that first year how great it was that there was all of these people. It's like a melting pot, because Christine's an artist, like a really good one, and we've had actors, writers, people that write poetry all in our backyard, amongst a lot of musicians, videographers, photographers. These are all people with amazing artistic value, and here they all were in, you know, on a hill on a river in Dighton. It was a cool experience.
So Christine, you are the supervisor?
Training and development manager for Samaritan South Coast. Yes.
Okay, so talk about Samaritans a little bit.
Samaritans is an emotional support and suicide prevention hotline.
Here in the city.
We are located in the city,
Yep.
but since COVID, that was a silver lining for Samaritans as well, because instead of having one call center, we went remote. And now we have people clearly across the country, you know, as far away as California, answering our phones and working at Samaritan South Coast. So it's really a special thing that happened. We've been able to, we went from 2 employees in 2020, which was myself and the executive director, and now we're nearing 50.
Wow.
Along with volunteers. We have a lot of wonderful volunteers. Our longest standing volunteer has been with us for 20 years, answering a suicide hotline for no pay, no recognition, nothing. So we have wonderful people. So like I said, we're an emotional support and suicide prevention hotline. We answer 2 local lines. We are the center for the United States that answers the worldwide, the global, they just changed their name, I'm sorry, global suicide prevention hotline for seafarers. So seafarers, merchant marines, offshore fishermen who are at sea for extended periods of time have the highest rate of suicide out of any profession. So now they're able to take this number, and from anywhere they are in the middle of the ocean, they can reach one of the centers around the world.
Wow.
So we're pretty proud to be the one for the United States due to our proximity to New Bedford, one of the wealthiest seaports in America. And then we answer 988, which is the new number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That went live in July. And since that has gone live, we have statewide increased the amount of calls that come into our centers by 30%. Our center gets about 40% more. We answer anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 calls a month. So we went from 15 hours a day, now we're 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You can call and you can just get somebody to listen to you.
That's
and you
awesome.
don't have to be afraid of repercussions. If you say you're suicidal, we're not going to call the police. You know what I mean? You can admit that to us and get it out without being afraid of what's going to happen. You know?
That's
So
amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And so Riverstock, which takes place January 14th at the Narrows, here we are, from 12 to 4. It is a free event, We want to fill the place with all of you out there in the community, and come down and listen to some live music. The Samaritans, South Coast Samaritans, will benefit from Riverstock. It's donation. You can bring your own libations and eat, and just come during the afternoon and listen to some wonderful music. We have a stage full of talented local artists. So I want to thank all of you for coming in, promoting Riverstock. It's going to be quite an event. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Lucy.
And we'll see you next time.